Sony have released this morning their version 2 firmware for the FX6, which adds some really important new features. The link to download this is down in the description, and I'm just going to quickly talk you through what's new. Now, we haven't had the firmware ourselves yet. This video is being made, of course, before it's been released. So this is just simply to let our customers know that it's available and what is in it. If you want a more in-depth, hands-on look at the new firmware, head over to see our good friend Philip Bloom, who's releasing a full, long review over on his channel. The main update is to autofocus tracking. It makes the FX6 behave a bit more like the A7S Mark III and the FX3 by giving us fast control over object tracking by simply touching the screen. Before this update, the FX6 was slow to control things like object tracking. It has a fantastic autofocus system, don't get me wrong. It's one of the best on the market, very powerful, very reliable. This is purely a UI problem really with object tracking specifically, and this new update seems to really help things. It makes autofocus tracking on the camera much faster to control from what we've seen. Philip's video, of course, goes much more in depth on this than we can here, so head over there if you want to know more and see it for yourself. Autofocus is definitely the most important update here. But it's certainly not the only thing we're pleased to see in this firmware update though, so let's quickly go through the rest of the improvements. First up is the focus breathing compensation feature, which we've seen on the A7 Mark IV, which is fantastic to have. Hopefully Sony add this to every camera they do. They've programmed in a bunch of their lenses so that the camera knows how much they breathe when they're focusing in and out, and the camera does a slight digital crop and upscale in resolution as you pull focus in order to compensate for that without any noticeable drop in quality. This, of course, only works with Sony's list of lenses, which doesn't include any third-party lenses right now, but it's great to see. We get raw output over the HDMI port, just like on the FX3 and the A7S Mark III. Now, we could already get raw out over the SDI port, but this means we're going to be able to use the Atomos Ninja 5 without the SDI module to save having to buy that extra accessory option. I would actually recommend people use SDI though if possible, as the connection is much more sturdy than sending your main record format out over an HDMI port. But it's great to have both options now. Bokeh Control is a really interesting one. This lets you change your depth of field while keeping the exposure constant by using a mixture of variable ND and gain without you having to do anything. It all happens in the background. It's a really interesting way of using these new technologies like variable ND, and it means that you can use this for all kinds of creative reasons, like narrowing the depth of field down on your subject to focus the viewer's attention mid-shot, for example, things like that. It's quite an exciting one. We get a dual workflow for when you need to deliver both SDR and HDR, similar to what they do in their camcorders like on the Z190. We get a 4-channel audio meter display and some other small feature updates. The other big new addition though, which I'm very happy to see, is picture cage recording, which will really open the FX6 up to new styles of work. Having pre-roll recording in both normal and slow motion modes is a must-have for work such as filming wildlife and sports. And these are both areas where the FX6 is actually very well suited in other areas. The only thing that stopped it being adopted more in that world is cage recording, which we now get. As far as firmware updates go, this is a pretty feature-rich one. So if you own an FX6 already, I would absolutely suggest updating it with the link down below. But for now, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.